Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CDF webinar on the topic Developing Capacities of Stakeholders to Advance Urban Sanitation. My name is Srinivas, and I am working as a consultant in Urban Practitioners Program team of IIHS. Before we begin, I would like to give a brief introduction of the webinar, and also I would like to introduce our guest speaker. This webinar is conducted as a part of the Capacity Development Forum, the CDF. This CDF is a forum where we try to bring different stakeholders of capacity development in urban arena in one platform. So this platform serves as a good tool to engage, discuss, and also learn from each other. This will be done mostly through series of webinar as well as through an annual event. As the title indicates, today's webinar focuses on urban sanitation stakeholders capacity development. In this webinar, we will be discussing on current urban sanitation challenges, stakeholders, and how to address these stakeholders through capacity development and so on. For this purpose, we are privileged to have with us today Depinder Kapur, a distinguished expert in development and wash sector. Depinder Kapur currently serves as the director of the water program at the Center for Science and Environment. With a wealth of experience working with various national and international organizations, Mr. Kapur has been in the forefront of research, advocacy, and capacity development initiative in the field of urban sanitation. I welcome Depinder Kapur to the webinar. And before we begin the discussion, I request Depinder Kapur to give an introductory remark.
Thank you for inviting me, Srinivas, and I'm very happy to be here. I see this as an opportunity for an informal dialogue, and I look forward to question and answer from the participants. And I hope that this recording will contribute to thinking and reflection of experience. I'm not an academic expert on capacity development. I speak from my experience and also some study and research I have done on understanding capacity development as a subject. And I'll be happy to share my experience, and I look forward to Srinivas and IIHS, leading this initiative and CSC partnering in such a learning initiative. Thank you. You're on mute, Srinivas.
Sorry. So yeah, thank you, sir. Before moving on to the next discussion part, I would like to give a brief information to participant. So if you have any doubts or clarification or question and answer, you can put it either in a chat box or else question and answer box. We will address all these things as we go along the webinar. So we'll now move on to the interactive segment of this webinar. So my first question to Mr. Depinder Singh is, sir, in your experience, what do you think are the current challenges of urban sanitation in India, both with sewer sanitation, non-sewer sanitation, and how these challenges are being addressed through current policies, practice, and capacity building initiatives?
Yes, I think before we start speaking about capacity development challenges, we should speak on urban sanitation challenges because both are linked. Therefore, I see about 3 or 4 key challenges of urban sanitation systems. And, when we identify them, then we can see what kind of challenges and gaps on the field are there, and then for what capacity building priorities should be. So the first challenge I see is that an understanding of what urban sanitation actually is. And many times we confuse it with just treatment of wastewater. But if you see, the origin of urban sanitation came as a public health initiative. That is why the central government agency which deals with sanitation is called Central Public Health and Environmental Engineering Organization. It's a big name, but the fact is that health, public health, and public systems is what defines urban sanitation systems. And what is perhaps missing, and this is a definition of the past century. So I think what could be added to that is an importance of a circular economy. So an urban sanitation system must talk also of a circular economy, which is not, it is not doing currently. or is not doing enough. Bangalore and some other cities are ahead because of their own initiative. But at the national level, we don't see urban sanitation seen as a circular economy perspective. It is still seen as an infrastructure and engineering perspective. Secondly, the challenge in urban sanitation systems is that uh, our cities and our towns develop first and infrastructure comes later. Or the cities expand, they occupy new areas first, habitation comes first, and then we think of retrofitting solutions there. So spatial land development does not follow either a city master planning framework or a sanitation systems planning framework. So if you see Delhi, where I live, our sewerage systems in Delhi expanded from the core to the periphery. The sewerage system was always seen as to be outside the city, not inside. Why? Because we were dealing with large centralized sanitation systems. We believe we could pump away our sewage to any distance we wanted. Now that is possible when your city is small, but as it expands, so where I live in West Delhi, the sewage treatment plants kept moving 5 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 5 kilometer like that. So as the city expanded, the sewage system and the treatment plants kept going out, 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 or they rather kept increasing from inside also remained, then another one came and another one came. So when we are talking of sanitation systems, this is how actually things are happening on the ground. And therefore, not all cities have sanitation systems. So some people are, and even Delhi, with all its great infrastructure, still has about 45% people not connected to sewage systems. So that's the kind of challenge we have of the spatial development and urban master planning norms not being followed. The third challenge is the fact that there is no long-term planning for sanitation systems. For example, each state in India and towns certainly should have a long-term perspective, say 20 years. It shouldn't be based on a 5-year framework, which we currently have. We move from mission to mission, scheme to scheme. But at the state level, and we've been propagating that in CSC in all the states where we have worked, that the state should have a 20-year time frame for urban sanitation systems, which should define how many cities, what percentage of which cities will move from non-sewer to sewer, and how, and what is the financial requirement. Sanitation systems are like health systems. You have to invest long term. You cannot do it for short term because systems are all interlinked. It's like the human health system. So you can't work on research that we will do on heart, we will do for 5 years, then we'll do on lungs. So here also sanitation system, you need to have a perspective which is 20 years and plan accordingly. Otherwise, it will be at the mercy of schemes and projects which currently we face. The third the third challenge I see, which is linked to the first point of a circular economy, is the reuse. Reuse has never been planned in a sanitation system. It is always an add-on. So now we have a issue of requirement of water and which we can't meet through our water supply. So we're talking of reuse. So Bangalore is a classic case where municipal services are saying we can't treat also, and you reuse also. So our reuse is being planned in a very big way, which is very good. So, but it's come because it wasn't planned earlier. Now it is being brought in, and it's not part of a sanitation systems thinking. So a sanitation engineering course or sanitation engineers are never taught that it's a circular economy issue of how to recycle your waste in agriculture, how to reuse your wastewater for agriculture or for industrial or other uses. And the fourth gap is this issue of policy and standards. So the policy and standards are very much treatment focused. And at best, and CSC has been saying this very loudly, we don't have reuse standards, we have treatment standards. So our treatment standards are essentially addressed to water pollution, how to prevent our rivers from being polluted. Therefore, we have strict standards that we don't dispose of our wastewater in rivers with a certain level of pollution load on BOD and COD. But if it is for agriculture reuse, then standards would be very different. And that is something which then impacts the entire sanitation infrastructure, business, investment, projects, because you are still going with the old understanding of treatment and disposal, not of reuse. So you keep jumping from high-end technologies and try to improve your things. So I think in brief or in long, I think these are the couple of issues. And therefore, what happens not having a long-term strategy also leads to projects which are one-dimensional. Like suddenly there is a shift for 24/7 water supply.
Yeah.
Or FSM. Or if you look at current SPM, the focus is on interception and diversion. So there is this challenge that how do you have a long-term focus and not have a project focus, and how to have a longer-term vision, which is on not just circular economy, reuse, but also equity and justice. Because we have in the next, I mean, we will, I hope, discuss this issue of what is actually happening on the ground. So that there are these issues which need to be brought into a sanitation systems understanding.
Yeah. So, I mean, this, like you were mentioning about engineers are not being well thought about these challenges, like especially the circular economy, and why we should look at towards reuse standards rather than treatment standards and so on. So this, I mean, poses a major question like where we are as doing trainings and capacity building initiatives, where we are right now, what are the strategies we are following, and what are the gaps we have, I mean, and how to address these gaps. And also, as you said, it's not just about infrastructure creation. So there are many more other things involved in urban sanitation. So there are a whole range of stakeholders. Like there is in one end, there are communities, and other end, there are government officials, and in between, there are practitioners, consultants, designers, urban planners. Everybody comes in the picture. So my next question is on like if you specifically focus on capacity development initiatives. So what do you think like our current strategies are, and where we are lacking, and how to improve upon that?
Srinivas, this question is linked to the status of our towns, large and small. So if we just discuss that for 2 minutes. So for example, look at our large towns like Bengaluru, Delhi, Chennai. Our large towns have now large built up areas. And our urban centers, especially the big metros, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, even Pune now, face the twin challenge of sanitation as well as stormwater drainage. And these are two systems currently under two different departments in India. So the sanitation systems are usually, managed by an BWSSB or Delhi Jal Board or the municipality. One wing manages your liquid waste and the other wing manages your solid waste. And stormwater drainage also they manage, not the utility which is dealing with water supply and sanitation. So our large cities are facing a problem of flooding every year. And even places like Lucknow have flooding. And a short spell of 15-20 minutes can be attributed to climate change as well. But the fact is that there is no drainage worth its name. And therefore, a lot of problems arise where our stormwater drainage then is mixed into our sewerage system. So our sewerage systems in India are not designed as combined sewers. If you ask CPHU, that is what they'll tell you. CSC had done a study last year on stormwater management, and we showed this very clearly that, what is happening is in the absence of a stormwater drainage, our sewerage systems get overloaded and they break down very often. And also our roads become rivers, what happened in Bengaluru last year. So all the stormwater somehow, because of the footprint is so large, there's so much of in situ surface water generation, even during a short rainfall. And it may be normal as well. Everything is not related to climate change. So the water flows in the city like a river, which was not the case earlier when the city footprints were smaller, built areas were smaller. Then we have large, dense, unplanned settlements. So the first point I was referring about for urban footprint is then how do we revamp our thinking about sewerage and sanitation systems? CSE is doing a study in one of the very dense unplanned settlements right in front of our office in Tughlakabad called Sangam Vihar. And we were surprised that the institutional mechanism for stormwater drainage in India, and that's not Delhi, is that whoever owns the road is responsible for stormwater drainage. So stormwater drainage naturally then is not just the stormwater generation from the road, it comes from the neighboring settlements. And if it comes on the road, then we are only looking at drainage. So one of the drawbacks is we are not looking at conservation, but the other problem is that in dense unplanned settlements like Sangam Vihar, not having a drainage, not having a sewerage system also, because that would have also taken it away, and not having a proper drainage system leads to flooding and leads to all the other impacts which come with this. Then we look at the small and medium towns in India. Those small and medium towns have a very different challenge. And their challenge, I believe, from my experience, is essentially of grey water management. Because they don't have sewerage systems and their drainage systems are also very weak. And therefore, a lot of grey water management challenges experienced there in terms of their lakes and water bodies. And they ask us, when they come to CSC in our training programs, they ask us what can we do and suggest to us. And then we say, okay, let's look at DWATs and nature-based solutions for your towns. But that understanding of what is required is a big challenge. So we'll come to that capacity building, but this is where the context is.
Correct.
So our issues are very different for large metros and big towns, and then we have the small towns. And the third category is this unplanned dense settlements, which are like mini cities within a city. Sangam Vihar, we are studying, has a population of 1 million plus. And it's not just one settlement. The neighboring 3-4 settlements may also have 111. So you're dealing with a large, dense, unplanned settlement whose water supply also, stormwater, and sanitation systems are a major challenge. And therefore, when we are talking of capacity development, if we just talk it in a very formalistic manner, it doesn't help us understand the context and then the priorities of what capacity building we should be talking.
Yes, you are rightly mentioned, sir. As we come, there are, different segments within that. As you said, stormwater management gave an example. It's a good example. It doesn't just belong to one particular department or board. So, addressing capacity, all these issues through capacity building becomes very important. So I was just thinking about some of your past experience, if we specifically speak about FSM, you have worked in SCBP. So, I just want to ask a question on your experience on that. What thought process went in developing FSM modules, capacity development modules? What were the challenges you faced, and what were the lessons learned?
Yeah. Before that, Srinivas, if this is the context of sanitation in India, I would define the capacity building challenges first in a larger framework. Then we will come to FSM because
Sure.
otherwise, we lose the track. So I believe the first capacity building challenge actually is a lack of a systems thinking and understanding. Because we jump from C word to non-C word to FSM to IND, and so a lack of a systems understanding and it varies from town to town, and from India is such a geographically diverse area. We have mountain cities, we have coastal areas, desert areas. So understanding of a sanitation systems thinking is more important than an understanding of an engineering systems thinking. I believe currently we have an engineering systems thinking, which is like how do you fit a solution to a problem, not looking at the creatively of what combination of treatments and solutions can work. So, for example, therefore we jump from one treatment systems to the other. And I had visited Denmark 2 years back on a IWA workshop, and I was pleasantly surprised that they have their old ASP systems still working, and they have augmented it with denitrification plants, removing phosphorus, generating energy from sludge. They haven't decommissioned an old plant and replaced it with a high-tech UASPR or an SPR system. So I think that is important, because if you have a good understanding of sanitation systems, then you will not become engineering solution focused. Therefore, what is missing is actually a conceptual understanding of sanitation systems, why, what, and that is a big problem at all levels, because I understand the compulsions of government departments. They are supposed to deliver, and they cannot pontificate and debate and discuss. So sometimes they are pushed into schemes and they have to work there. But what the problem there, what happens is that when sanitation systems are designed, they become very bulky and costly. So, for example, at NIUA, we had done a review of the Andaman and Nicobar's islands sanitation system. And the sanitation system what was proposed was very expensive. And what we suggested to them was, instead of building 3 STPs, build 5 STPs, which are a little more decentralized. That will ensure your pumping cost comes down, because sewage pumping is the major cost component of operations. So the whole idea is that a decentralized sanitation systems understanding is important rather than a sanitation engineering system, because then you can build any infrastructure and operate it. That's not the point. And as I said, for small town, you may need to look at a different sanitation systems understanding, or for a mountain regions and coastal areas. So this knowledge gap is a major gap in sanitation capacity building challenge. Most of our institutes and training professionals have a very good engineering systems knowledge and understanding, but they can't relate it with the context. So if you call an engineer who is either a good sewerage systems engineer or even a DVATS engineer, and ask that person, how do you address this problem of a small town? They will not be able to answer. They will say, well, our solution is this. So that approach really is a problem. And then there's this larger approach of a vision of, as I said, of an inclusive, climate resilient, circular economy systems. That gets a complete backseat. And I think in CSE, we did last year a training program in South Africa for their Department of Water and Sanitation engineers. And we were very happy that they welcomed this larger conceptual understanding. And this is actually very missing. We straight jump to DPRs. So coming to your question of our experience in FSM, we started implementing FSM under the sanitation capacity when my experience was that time about 7 years ago now with the SCDP. And even now also in CSC, if you go to a city and say that we have come for capacity development, the commissioner or the urban development department says, well, that is fine, but can you do DPRs for us? For the government, capacity building is DPR. They think that if you
Yeah.
give us something, we can at least implement it. If you do just hold trainings, what is the point in that? So that is something which is a big challenge. How to actually, ingrain basic knowledge, a higher level of understanding of sanitation systems with the circular economy, and in a manner that you give something which they want, because you should give them something with which they can build their
Yes.
DPRs, but you should also give them more than that.
Yes. So you were speaking about the, I mean, larger, like the way we lack as a capacity building programs is like making participant to understand the larger picture of like larger conceptualization of urban sanitation. So this brings also you were mentioning about the like especially if you see government officials, like it's about for them it's about making DPRs. It's making about creating infrastructures. So like this brings to my next question, I mean especially as a empaneled institute ourselves, and also I'm sure that CSC and other institutions also might be facing a lot of challenges in this, like bringing nomination is one part, and second thing is the making participant to attend and also attentively listen this training programs. So this brings to my next question on motivation factor. So what do you think are the major motivation factors which drives for participant to attend and attentively listen to the training programs? And I mean also like this is one in one segment, like especially if you consider government officials as a stakeholders, and also there is another stakeholder community. So for them, capacity building is a altogether a different thing. It's all about bringing behavioral change. So what do you think are the good strategies for bringing up this motivation factor?
Okay. Yes, as I said, when you deal with government stakeholders, when you deal with students, or when you deal with um, experts and professionals, they are a different set of people. And I believe, therefore, I've always felt that capacity building is not like teaching. In teaching, you orient a student or a learner to think. In training, you orient the person to do. So training is all about doing, and teaching is all about thinking, and contradictory ideas, and how to absorb a lot of different ideas and be able to analyze different. That's the aim of teaching. In training, we are pushed into addressing what needs to be done, how can it be done. But there, the real challenge, and this is what we face every day in CSC or any organization will face, is that if you make it too, too implementation focused, then the trainee, sorry, may actually get a good understanding of how to do certain things. But when he or she has to apply it in a different context, they will not know how to apply it. Therefore, all the good training modules, I believe, should, and this was the one of our experience in SCBP when we were doing the training modules. The first training modules in FSM were called orientation training.
Yes.
And then BMGF was our grantee of several other organizations. And a mapping was done that time of all the modules being developed by different organizations. And it was found everybody was doing an orientation training module. Just a few of them, maybe CDD, because it had a technical bent of mind, was doing what they used to call advanced training. Orientation, advanced training. This was the kind of framework people had. At that time in NIOA, we had this engagement with a lot of other partners, including IIHS, CSC, and ASCII, and others, SET, In fact, with SEPT, we first developed our orientation module that time. And then we were looking at what next. Then we realized that you can't have one advanced FSM training module which combines everything, because that becomes too big. It becomes 5 days, 7 days, and you don't get government officials for 5 days, 7 days. And also, it doesn't make sense combining everything into one module. So we realized we needed a planning module and a design module. FSM planning, FSM design. So this was one of the first lesson we had, and I think everybody agreed to it. It came out of consultation process. I think knowledge and learning is built through a consultative. It's never one person owned or one organization. So this kind of strategy that you develop modules, then which the participants can absorb. So you don't go to engineers who have worked for 10 years with an orientation module. They will laugh at you. Or if you go to an administrative person and say, let's do a design module with you, they will not understand. So all agencies, whether it is CSC or IIHS, we all face that challenge that when we get nominations, we get a mixed set of officials. Some are junior, some are senior, some are administrative, some are technical. And then, it becomes a little difficult. So I think from our experience, what we saw, and now what we are also doing at CSC, we focus more on planning, orientation and planning. Less orientation now because FSM, of course, is now scaled up in India, but more on planning and a little on design. Because design modules we have, but they are very specific for an audience, which is technical. And if you can't push it with a mixed audience. So, and as I said, you need to also engage with them. You should give a basic conceptual understanding, but also meet their requirements. And if they're officials from small towns, like CSC has a UP program, our major presence is in UP, and UP itself has 763 towns. The largest statutory towns, more than Tamil Nadu, are in UP actually, and many of them are very small and medium towns. So there the requirements are very different, and their DWATS kind of modules, they work better because, as I was telling earlier, they have a grey water issue and their lakes and water bodies. So there, uh, even FSM is, a treatment module. You have to take it one scale backwards. So I think India being so diverse and our lessons are rich, therefore in CSC we are updating our DWATS modules to suit the requirements today. Because DWATS were initially designed as institutional treatment systems or for smaller settlements, colonies. Then we upscaled it when we started doing FSTP, and we committed a lot of mistakes in that. But now we are going back and saying, let's review our DWATS training modules, make it more relevant for the officials, then they will be interested. Otherwise, if we call officials and we start telling them what is DWATS and what is FSTPs, they still ask us that same question. So tell us what we should do in our town. And we have a DPR to make. So I think those things are important. And when it comes to students and practitioners, it can be a little more open. You can combine a few things. So, and learning is always about growing. So it is not that you repeat the same thing again and again and again. So what we are doing in our training modules now is that we have also identified 2, 3 very specific modules. One is co-treatment of septage with STPs. So this is something which should be done, and there we have a training module on co-treatment. We are also, instead of saying we will do FSM training, now we talk about integrated wastewater and septage management. So where we are saying we will look at all wastewater and septage, and this, I think the idea was developed based on the training content which GIZ had earlier prepared, and then with EcoSan Services and their team members. I mean, they did an excellent job. And an IWSM planning and designing module was, was found to, because you bring in city officials and you say we will only talk of septage, they will say, what about other water? And the third thing which we are doing in CSC now is we are integrating sanitation safety planning in all our modules. There is a separate module also of sanitation safety planning promoted by WHO, but we feel that is good. But components of that need to be integrated into our treatment, systems, our training modules, which will, advance the understanding of sanitation systems towards also safety. So these are some of the challenges, and how you can ensure that participants therefore come and learn. And of course, you also have to now talk about internet-based, or sorry, online trainings, gamification. We also develop gamification modules. So anything which catches the attention, goes beyond just exercises on chart papers. That is very much required.
Yes. I mean, like you are speaking about the tailoring specific models to the specific states. So, I mean, this brings up the follow-up question, especially academic and research institutes, which generally lack little bit on practice. So, how they can collaborate on design organizations or implementation organizations to bring about this training modules, and how important it is.
Yes, I think there is enough content existing, Srinivas. So now, and there are experts and trainers. I also feel that a trainer is also a skill. So if somebody can write, somebody can train, but a good trainer must have a good understanding of the subject. That's also important. Just a good orator or somebody who can play games will not be a good trainer. Maybe a good workshop coordinator, but not a good trainer. So content is there. As I was saying, you need to design the module as per the context. And as I repeat that again, you go to a state official, they say we need a DPR. Then you say, okay, we will do one training. Then that's how we learned. We started with an orientation module, then we thought of advanced, and then we felt advanced doesn't mean much, then broke it down into planning and designing. Then we are talking of co-treatment, IWSM, and things like that. So now we are also in CSC developing an interception and diversion based treatment systems thinking as part of IWSM. So because under SVM, IND is being promoted. So Srinivas, many times you have to enter the door from whichever side is open. So the goal should be very clear that we are talking of circular economy, inclusivity, and health outcomes. So if that is clear, CSC's mandate is thinking is very clear on this. We are into this game because this is our aim, is not to promote IND as a treatment system, DWATS as a treatment system, sewerage system as a treatment system, but it is with these outcomes that it must be decentralized. Circular economy concept should be promoted, inclusion should be there, and finally climate resilience, because we are dealing with it. So our thinking and those elements you have to weave into a training module. Otherwise, CSA believes that a lot of our understanding of urban sanitation systems and solutions, even water, becomes normative and techno-managerial. So we have done a critique at CSC about this water sensitive cities framework, and we are calling our framework as a global South water sensitive cities framework, in which we say that a city must address at least four things and have a goal. The goal should be equity and justice and reuse and in a circular economy frame. And the four principles or pillars of a city to call itself water sensitive, first should be that your treatment systems, whichever are existing, must actually function. Because in India, that's a major problem. That's part of the first question itself. We have a lot of treatment systems, they don't work. The second is the treatment systems should be inclusive. They should serve the excluded people. There's no point in expanding your treatment systems, but a large population is still outside their scope. And the third is stormwater management. So unless you can address stormwater management, you can't be a water sensitive city. So the aim should be conservation, but also discharge, which is not the case and is not the case in the West from where these water sensitive cities are frameworks are coming, because they are talking about conservation. We are also talking of discharge because our city's footprint is huge. We need to look at discharge. We of course should prioritize conservation of water for groundwater recharge, but also look at discharge. And the fourth point was about reuse. And unless you prioritize that in the Western, in the developed countries, this is not an issue for them. They're actually going much ahead in terms of norms and standards. They don't reuse. Agriculture is not their priority. For us, we reuse is our priority. So these four things we define as a pathway for developing an understanding of sanitation systems and water supply for our cities, which we hope can help anybody who is into this work of urban water and sanitation systems to then prioritize and not go for small projects here and there, but look at the whole city and also maybe sometimes the neighboring areas which bear the brunt of the urban wastewater. I'm so sorry if I made such a long monologue.
It's fine. It's relevant. So I was just, as you speaking about this practice, and also as you said, this is quite related to the first question which I asked. So I just saw a few questions in the chat box, the question and answer box. So if you are related to that, I think it's better if you take those questions right now.
Sure.
So one, like Amir is asking on, like right now, roads have become drains, and I mean, like we are encroaching a lot of area, and this is all because of filling up of the natural areas, and also he's asking to kindly elaborate on it. And also I'm sure that your organization is working on some resilience projects, also resilience of urban sanitation response. So there are some questions related to that technical question. One is on assessing catchment scale flood resilience of urban areas using grid cell based metric. What is your opinion? And second one is on a global analysis approach for investigating structural resilience in your urban drainage area. Just can you highlight on this?
Yeah, I also was looking at those questions. So, Amir, my first part, I was trying to restate that again and again. I agree with you. Natural sinks are filling up. We are losing urban water bodies, wetlands, and also public spaces in the urban areas, the way urbanization is happening in India. So, therefore, if you lose sinks, then flooding is a natural thing to happen. But what I was trying to say was look at Bangalore, which has expanded from 100 square kilometers to 800 square kilometers. So if your built up area expands 8 times, your ability to conserve the runoff which it generates also diminishes substantially. So, like if you look at Delhi, Yamuna is polluted, we all know. Even with 10 BOD of treated wastewater, which is the standard as per NGT, if Delhi dumps more than 1,000 million gallons a day of treated wastewater, which it's not all treated, but even if I'm saying 1,000 mgd at 10 BOD, still amounts to about 100 tons per day of BOD load on the riverbed. So last time when the Jamuna flooded in Delhi in July, August, CSE made this one point was made by many people. I'm not saying it was just CSE, but we showed this that even with the highest level of treatment, if your waste footprint is so high, you will end up, dumping a lot of solid waste, even at the highest level of treatment into your water body. And that was also considered as one of the factors of flooding, that the base of the river is rising and its capacity to convey water in floods is reducing. That's not the only reason. It has to still to be verified. But your question about natural sinks is very important. All I'm saying is, but if you see the built-up load, it may not be enough to address that. The second point about assessing catchment scale flood resilience using a grid cell based metric, I think that is a more of a planning tool. But the previous point still surfaces again. What do you do with a grid based matrix? It just helps you identify which are the areas in that grid which can be sink, which can, absorb the water. But finally, if the pressure is large, all the grids are leading to a very large picture, then it may not, it does certainly work in the European countries. There are cities which are small and medium and which have a different intermittent rainfall. It works there. In our country, in India, we have 3 months of monsoon, 10, 20 days of high rainfall intensity days. So I think we should not copy paste solutions. There is merit in what is coming from the developed countries, but we should see our own approaches. So, for example, in Sangam Vihar, Delhi, or in Bangalore, I mean, Bangalore in South India has a different context, and Bangalore is able to pump its water, treated water to Kolar, which is great. And I think that others, whichever is cities are in that frame, should do that, which generate large amount of wastewater. But just look at the stormwater issue. If you see in Delhi, if you want to actually in our study in Delhi, we have calculated a 15-minute rainfall episode in our Sangam Vihar generates about 100,000 liters or more. And then how do you handle this much water? You actually have to take it away somewhere, and for which you will actually have to build more grey infrastructure so that you are able to, build your green, use your green infrastructure. So we are saying you may be required to actually look at solutions which are very different for the Indian cities. And this is again the big metros. I'm not, extrapolating that for all our small and medium towns. I've already said they have a grey water issue there. So I think practically we need to look at those challenges.
Thank you. Sir, we have one question specifically related to capacity development. So, anonymous attendee is asking that this capacity building right now, what we prioritize is like especially institutions, it's through invitation, not as an open participation. So, especially people who prioritize social solution, how they can be included in this capacity development initiatives. And also, there is one follow-up question with that from anonymous attendee again. So he is asking about, can you state with few example, how can we foster a culture of engagement and participation within our community?
I mean, both the questions are linked and by the same person, he or she, we don't know. I think what is important here is that I fully agree. There should be more informal interactions rather than very structured formal trainings. And some of our training programs we have held with, say, Aquadam, which does a lot of good work on groundwater. They have to be have a good mix of practice and theory on ground practice as well as in theory. And formal training programs have this limitation that they are bound by geography or a training setup. CSC is fortunate that we have our own very good, well equipped training campus, beautifully located, close to Delhi. has great classrooms and a wild environment around it. So you can't be distracted by, urban other distractions. But then it comes at a cost. So the first question about, CSE makes open invitations. Our training programs are announced. We secure open participation along with all our trainings, whether it's for government or otherwise. And of course, cost can be a factor for some people. But to answer your question, the other way is that more informal, shorter interactions. Aquadam, I believe, does very good trainings at a much lower fees and for longer duration, but many people can't spare time for longer duration. So it's a trade-off of these factors. If you call good experts, they will not stay with you for 2 days, 5 days, that is big. And I think one of the core principles of capacity building and learning is that it should be on the job. Capacity development should never be seen as an exercise by any organization, whether CSC or government or private. If your work doesn't give you an opportunity to develop your capacity, no amount of training programs will do capacity development. So on the job capacity development, mentoring, having a learning culture, people actually discussing learning, that's the best capacity development. And that's what it used to be in our time when we started a few decades ago. And that is what is missing greatly. That is why we tend to sometimes rely more on workshops and capacity building. But if it was actually happening organically in your work, you got an opportunity to work on other project, the other project got an opportunity to work with you. You work through the entire life cycle of a project from beginning, middle, ending. That's real capacity development, not learning about it in a classroom.
Certainly. I also feel that we are doing more of formal training programs as institutions. So we should move towards more informal. Yeah, that brings inclusivity, and we can include many other stakeholders as well. There is one question in chat box that speaks about wastewater reuse. I think uh, the participants is specifically speaking about one project which is happened in Bangalore. I'll just frame that question in a different way. So while we doing the projects, how important is to do a feasibility survey rather than just be fascinated with the project itself and the name of the project, because attendee is speaking about a specific project that Bangalore wastewater is being treated far up in another place, and that water wastewater is being reused for in other place, and this is bringing up some health issues. So maybe the attendees may be asking that this feasibility study is not done properly, and that is what is bringing to this problem. So what is your take on this? How important it is to do the feasibility survey?
Feasibility and regular monitoring, Srinivas. So I think monitoring is required on a regular basis, on a public consultation, open access, transparency. All that will be very important in the years to come. Otherwise, what may look clear and clean may not be clear and clean. What is visible is visibly polluted, but many times it may have hidden. One more thing I wanted to say about organizations. You see, what do we do as organizations, IIHS, CSC? I think we should, the important thing in capacity development, if you see the textbook definition of capacity development is of an individual, of an institution, and of a system and policy change. So if you look at the definitions of capacity development, they'll say capacity development is not just about individual, it's about institutional systems, it's about policy, anything which contributes to an outcome of improved knowledge to practice and change is considered capacity development. But I feel we have reached a time and a stage in organized capacity development where we are doing a lot of PPT on informative content based trainings, which are very bad. I feel content is king in capacity development. And giving information is not capacity development. That's, anybody can do on Google. So a lot of training programs, a lot of organizations become PPT based training programs, which don't contribute much to learning. They give you information, but then that's not capacity development, even if in that narrow sphere of how to do, they don't, convey that. So in NIUA, we had developed a framework which we called Capacity Development Effectiveness Ladder, where we said that any institution, and this is for institutions only, how do you assess the effectiveness of your capacity development work? And you do it through 5 steps, a ladder step. At the base is content. Without good content, you cannot do any effective capacity development. Then the second is partnerships. To do good capacity development needs to have partners. You can't say, I am doing capacity development, which is highest quality. It has to come with partners, and those define the strength and good partnerships, not just MOUs signed as partners. Third is your ability to um, strategy, which we define for FSM from orientation to planning design. How do you actually develop a strategy which is contemporary, which is effective? Because you can't say that I am doing 10 training modules for 20 stakeholders. That is not a strategy. And that's the learning we got from the NFSSM Alliance, that you have to have a strategy which defines a basic set of modules for a defined stakeholders. It's not for every stakeholder we have one training module and we are very happy we have 100 training modules. That's nothing to be proud of. So you have a strategy which should be clear, and this evolves. It's not a one-time thing. Then the fourth is visioning change. And as I said, we keep visioning change in a different way, in a higher way. It's not static. For example, reuse is a big priority for CSC now. And therefore, and sanitation safety planning for us is a big priority. So what is the change you are visioning is also very important. And finally, your own work in capacity development, does it contribute to a learning about capacity development? So I think that's the highest level. And we believe we are doing that by being in this position to raise all these questions, to be able to work on them. So I think that is very important for anybody who claims to be working on sanitation or any capacity development. That either do you have good content? Do you have good partnerships? Do you have a strategy? I mean, it's a more like an evaluation answer. If somebody was to do an evaluation of IHC or CSC, did you have a strategy? Did you have a vision? Did you contribute to the capacity building narrative or a discourse? So I think that is very important. That's how, as professionals, we all will grow. Otherwise, we will also stagnate.
Yes, yes. Thank you, sir. I think we have come to near to the end of this webinar. It's already like we have only left it 2 minutes. Would you want to say anything as a closing remarks before we formally conclude?
No, I just saw this last question is there on sanitation workers into experts, particularly among the vulnerable. Yes, certainly. I think sanitation capacity development is about people and equipping them to become knowledge holders. And therefore, that is also certainly an aim that you're many times you're in our trainings we have seen that the people who come to you are not decision makers. They get trained, but then they say, sir, we can't implement, we can't get budget, we can't put it in practice what you have told us. So I think there is a lack there, and therefore it is important to have a good conceptual understanding of things that you can use it later on when you want to actually implement or when you can implement things. And as somebody had told me, a professor in a UK university, that higher education is a passage into adulthood. So if you ask me how to end, I think one can end it here by saying that any learning and education is a passage into being a more rational and rational human being. So it should contribute to that. If it doesn't, it just gives you a lot of information and technical understanding. It may help you, but not in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think we are overshooting the time. So I'll just conclude this webinar. Before ending, I just want to thank formally Mr. Depinder Kapur for sharing his invaluable insights. And also, I would like to thank CAC organization. And also, I would like to extend my gratitude to all the participants for their active engagement, and also to the participant who asked me questions. So I think we have come to the end of the webinar. I would like to thank one and all. Thank you. This brings us to the end of the webinar. As I said in the beginning, this is conducted as a part of CDF, Capacity Development Forum. So we'll be conducting many more such webinar uh, in future, and also we'll be conducting an event. So I would like to participate to follow our IIHS social media pages for more information on this. Thank you.